Before we get started, remember to select the subscribe and notification bell to receive live updates on more great content. I'm well aware that going out for a late night date is dangerous, especially with a guy you just met off Tinder. But Lewis was a nice guy. Don't believe me? Let me tell you the story. He comes across as a bloody saint. Lewis asked if I wanted to grab some dinner. While we were at the restaurant, I suddenly remembered the light display going on at the river. There were going to be beautiful lights across the bridge, across the lake, in the trees. Lights turned on in beautiful patterns. We have to go. I exclaimed it suddenly. Now it was about 8:45 p.m., and the lights were going to be turned off in about an hour. Going would mean cutting it really close. But I was determined. It was the last day. As for the date, well, if we were going to be an item, Lewis would have to learn about my Instagram addiction sooner or later. Lewis was probably the nicest guy. After doing his calculations, he probably figured out we wouldn't make it in time. But because it made me happy, he said he would do it anyway. Who says there's no nice guys on Tinder? He drove us there. The lights were still on, and they looked beautiful. Immediately I passed him my phone. He offered to take them on his and send them to me. But he had an older model, and mine had a better camera. "Press this button and take a picture," I told him as I walked over to the first set of lights. He was so sweet. We went to the first several pieces of lighting, and he took my pictures. I completely lost track of time between having my picture taken, and of uploading the photos on Instagram. The fun continued even after the lights went out. The moonlight reflected off the river, giving great photo opportunities. No one came to shoo us out, so we were all alone. We laughed so much together. This was the best first date ever. He was my own personal photographer. In between photos, he talked about his interests. He had a lot of interests. I enjoyed listening to his interests. The likes were piling up on my posts, and I had so many reacts on my Instagram stories. While Lewis was talking about his interests, I checked some of the reactions from the stories. "What's that behind you?" I looked at the Instagram story they were referring to, and for the first time, noticed the black form in the background. I went through my stories and the reactions to find more questions. "What's that behind you?" Again and again, for the last 10 minutes. The dark form had been in the back of my pictures. Lewis must have seen the look on my face because he gently took my phone. In some pictures, the dark form looked like a wild beast with red eyes. "It's probably just a dog," I said out loud. My hand darted towards his, and I started pulling him off the bridge. Crack, crack, crack. We stopped. There was something behind us. "I think we should run," I whispered. A final crack, and I started running as quickly as I could. When I was far enough ahead, I heard a loud roar. Turning around, I saw that Lewis was nowhere behind me, but rather on the ground with a large beast towering over him. Was it a bear? A wolf? A dog? It didn't look like any of them, not with those red eyes. My brain only had a split second to think. Fight or flight? When Lewis screamed, I knew I couldn't leave him. It sounded stupid, but he was the best Instagram photographer I'd ever met. I ran as quickly as I could towards him. The only thing I had in my hand was a cell phone, so I threw it as hard as I could at the beast. My cell phone. My beloved cell phone. In the hard case that would hit the beast like a rock. It recoiled only briefly, but it was enough. I reached down and grabbed Lewis's arms. Pulling him took all my strength. I threw out my back and ended up fracturing a couple of my fingers. But Lewis was safe, and we were able to run to the car. Not until we had driven far enough away did we realize just how badly Lewis was injured. The next day, the police shared with the press that a wild animal had attacked Lewis. When I talked with Lewis, we agreed. It was like no wild animal we had ever seen before. Needless to say, either of us never went back to the river, and we especially didn't go anywhere at night. Lewis proved yet again to be the sweetest guy ever. Even while he was recovering, we went out and bought me a new phone. One with a top-of-the-line camera. Is it too soon to say that I think I'm gonna marry this guy?